Well, let's jump in, and I hope there's many more great bird sightings to come. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We've probably lost some of our crew to field work at this point, but happy to have anyone joining who's able. For our agenda today, we're going to start with Tony, who's going to talk about PIF priority areas used in NOCA scoring. And then we wanted to check in about future agenda items because we've been, over the last couple months, kind of working through everything that we were hoping to address on our fall meeting that was canceled. And so if now we need to sort of regroup and figure out where we'd like to go next. And just a couple updates on the ACE publications, PIF symposia, and other activities at upcoming meetings. Marcel had an item about the BCR, or about the BCR boundary and renaming or renumbering the new BCRs. And then I'm going to switch the agenda a bit and move that PIF product update to the end because I feel like that's going to be a longer conversation. I want to make sure we have time for the others. Was there anything else anyone wanted to add? All right. Well, I'll turn it over to you, Tony. Go ahead.
Thanks, Elaine. I don't have a presentation, but I do have some maps to show, and I'm sort of acting as the messenger here. Adam and Melissa, who are on the call, can correct me if I say anything wrong or if you have any questions at the end of my little spiel here. And I will try not to take up too much of your time because this is, I apologize, it's US centric, but I think it is important for Canadians and our Mexican counterparts to hear. So for those that don't know, the North American Wetlands Conservation Act is a major act the US uses to distribute money for habitat conservation for wetlands and wetland associated birds in Canada, the US, and Mexico. As part of the scoring for NOCA, they identify if a project area is in bird species priority areas. These priority areas, there's 4 of them from each of the 4 bird plans: shorebirds, landbirds, waterbirds, and waterfowl. PIF is unique in this case in that NOCA scoring is based on wetland associated and wetland dependent birds. So the map is supposed to reflect species under the PIF umbrella that are wetland dependent or wetland associated. So many of these maps haven't changed in a long time. Even the NAWAMP one is, the waterfowl one is 2012 was the last time that was done. And over time, we are joint venture coordinators and science coordinators who work with NOCA applications every year. They are part of the scoring process and are often an integral partner in getting NOCA grants submitted. Have noticed sort of an issue when these get submitted to Fish and Wildlife Service to get scored. In that, I'm zooming in here to kind of show you the issue. On this map, I believe, purple is the shorebird map, green is the PIF map. And I'll turn off the PIF map just for a second here. You can see this is the shorebird map, and you can see these little areas of coastline that are outside of this polygon here. That's just sort of a product of not the best shoreline polygons used when making these maps, right? It's not like they were trying to exclude this little point right here, we don't think. But NOCA, the people that then score NOCA grants, if your polygon was on this little point right here in the middle, that would be scored out. You wouldn't get points, right? They're not flexible there, right? For various reasons, and whether they are, and it's not really important about why they aren't, right? But it is important to know that that's what they do, right? So, and that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen in certain areas for certain maps. And you see for PIF, the PIF map, the green one, it does cover that really, and PIF doesn't have as many problems as the shorebird one is the worst, and that's the one that we've tackled first. And the landbird one, I'll show you where the major problems are in a second. So a group of coastal joint venture science coordinators, Atlantic, Pacific, Great Lakes, and Gulf Coast, got together and said, we want to sort of make a temporary fix for these larger coastal issues, right? NOCA takes its guidance directly from the plans, right? So the group was not trying to redo, let me zoom out for a second, this entire map, right? That is something that is not under the purview of joint ventures. It's under the purview of the plans themselves. But we know and we recognize the process to redo these maps maybe is not something anybody wants to tackle right now, or if they did want to tackle it right now, the process to do that is long, right? It takes quite a while. And the joint venture coordinators thought, well, we can fix, in the meantime, we don't want projects to get thrown out for this fix that we think is a fairly simple fix, right? So if we zoom in here on the main islands, that's one of the bigger issues for the shorebird one, right? You have this bad polygon of you're missing all these islands, and whereas the landbird one isn't quite so bad. I'll throw the waterfowl one on top. The waterfowl one is the least amount of problems. They buffered it quite a bit in 2012. So what the joint venture science coordinators have proposed to do is make a couple of fixes, present these to the plans for their approval fairly quickly to get these in for the next NOCA cycle. And I don't have a new landbird one to show you. I do have a new shorebird one I'll show you in a second. But let me show you the main problem area. This is a problem area for all of them, is the Gulf Coast, and especially this sort of the Mississippi Delta here, right? Where you have all these islands and all these islands that change quite a bit, right? We know there's a lot of marsh erosion and stuff going on in this area. So let's turn off landbird for a sec. So this is just shorebird in purple, and you can see all these areas that are sort of missed. Now I'll turn landbird back on, and it's the same issue, right? We don't think PIF ever meant to exclude these areas, but now if you had a NOCA project right here, that would get scored as out of a priority area. So the solution how do I move this out? There we go. The solution proposed for shorebirds, and that we are proposing first as our first try for landbirds, is the same. And so what I'm doing here is letting you know the issue, getting any comments back from you on the general solution, and then we'll bring an actual map to the PIF steering committee for their approval to say yes or no, this is okay to use what we're calling a corrected map for NOCA. So what we did for shorebirds, this is one of the first areas I zoomed in. Here I can I'll add on it's hard to see, but there's these lines here. That's the original shorebird polygon, and the green is the new proposed one. And what they did here is we had a GIS expert from the Atlantic Coast Joint Venture, Kirsten, pull a new up-to-date coastal polygon for both Atlantic and Pacific Coast, Great Lakes, and Gulf Coast. So then using that new coastal polygon, she buffered the Atlantic coast, the Pacific coast, and the Great Lakes coast by 5 kilometers. Right, that's what the group sort of decided as a balance between making sure we hit all these coastal areas, but not adding areas that weren't intended to be in the map in the first place. So you can zoom out and see, especially in Maine, you can see that now we have this new coastal polygon that did include these islands that weren't included before, and we have this buffer around them in case there's some other stuff that wasn't hit on those coastal maps. So 5 kilometers this is the proposed new shorebird map that we're taking to the shorebird group. 5 kilometers on the Great Lakes, Atlantic, and Pacific, but 20 kilometer buffer in the Gulf Coast to take to just sort of recognize that marsh migration here, the water depth changes in the Gulf Coast are significantly different than they are in the Great Lakes and the Atlantic and Pacific. So you can see here the original, this sort of cream colored line here, and the new proposed one in this green here. That then you get all these coastal islands. Any sort of NOCA project that might be proposing to create islands in the Gulf Coast, which is a common thing, would then be included in the shorebird map. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see, and I'm going to see if there's any questions and make sure I made a little bit of sense, at least. Go ahead,
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Tony. Thank you. I'll start off with the dumb questions as a Canadian and a songbird biologist. When you say we made the maps, I'm just wondering who is that we? And also, I'm wondering if you, of course, Canadians, I can't speak for the Mexicans. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of anxiety of how the new scoring has gone for the NOCA grants and our joint venture coordinators, and obviously trying to support them. So I'm just wondering, I know that on the Canadian side, we have the priority areas, but I don't know if, like, is there any, like, you guys just believe us when we do our own mapping, or is there any other kind of like international coordination about how any of these mapping priority areas, how we decide on the buffers, or it's just like we all just do our own thing? Thank you.
No, great questions. I'll start with the second one. I meant to mention that at the beginning. Canada, as you mentioned, Wendy, Canada is going through a new process for the first time right now. Lots of angst.
Freaking out.
They're not using the maps from the bird plans in their scoring. They're using maps created by the joint ventures. The relationship between NAWAMP, NOCA, and the joint ventures in Canada is quite a bit different than the relationship between those three entities in the US. So they're using maps, but they're using maps that joint ventures created. In Mexico, there are no maps. There are maps, but they're not polygons like this. They're like, well, as long as it's in these important wetland areas that are vaguely defined, is not a map. So that's why it's a US-centric issue. Who's the us that made these? It varies based on the group. For NAWAMP, it's the science team that then got the plan committee to endorse it. For waterbirds, it was the original Waterbirds Council. For shorebirds, it was the U.S. Shorebird Council that basically used NAWAMP map, added a couple blobs, and moved it up. The shorebird one's been changed a handful of times because they just left Alaska out for a long time for some reason. And the joint ventures, along with some shorebird council people, have been fixing errors from that one for the whole time. When I look at the PIF map, it looks like it's waterfowl areas with a couple important areas. I couldn't find any documentation on where the landbird map came from, the original one. So I can't answer that for landbirds.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, so also taking us back, because caveat, in all my experience, 26 years with migratory birds in the Fish and Wildlife Service, it's surprising I've never undergone any of these scorings for any projects. So my question is very much more fundamental, which is why we use maps in the first place. Rather than bird value or some other metric to score the importance of one area over another. The refresh on shorebirds looks like it does the trick, maybe, but it kind of leads me to ask the question why we even rely on the maps and not some other bird value like diversity and abundance of particular species. This probably just allows us to, like, broad scale. Yeah, these are generally good areas. So anything that falls within this blob counts as great bird habitat. But is it really? Like, there's a lot of private lands in there. I mean, it's kind of adjacent to what's likely to be good bird habitat, but it doesn't really drill down on how good. So I don't know. My question's more fundamental, how we ended up in this scoring scheme in the first place. Sorry for that very
No,
ignorant
well,
question.
I'll give you a broad answer, but if you really want to get in the nitty gritty, you have to talk to the NOCA staff. I posted the instructions in the chat here that this map is part of technical question 3, right? So it's just one of the 7 questions that gets scored in a proposal. There are other questions. There is a set of biological questions, and there's a set of sort of partner questions. So there's other biological questions that get addressed besides just where is it? It's how many birds, what sort of diversity of birds. There's other, and this is the same. You can find the Canadian standard instructions. They also include multiple biological questions that are similar to the US ones. So as far as whether we should use a map and why, yeah, that's above my pay grade. Ken.
Yeah, I'll provide a little more historical perspective, hopefully, and
Great.
actually pick up on what Mike was asking, because I had a similar thought at first, maybe not as drastic as why are we using maps, but certainly the question of can't they be used in a kind of a smarter way, and just actually seems like the Mexico system is better because they're not relying on an artificial polygon. But to go back to the original intent, because I think I was part of the group that was very originally tasked with how are land birds going to be considered, the whole creation of that technical question 3. I remember way back, it was kind of funny when I was a Northeast PIF coordinator, these proposals were trying to get extra question 3 points by putting American black duck in their plan because Partners in Flight listed it as a priority species in some areas. I mean, that's how, crazy this got. But the intent was that we developed a list of birds, salt marsh sparrow, marsh wren, a few things that we considered wetland dependent. And those very original polygons were most likely, and I don't know if you were involved back then, Andrew, but we probably just got a crayon out and, said, okay, here's an area on the coast and they've got a lot of sparrows. The intent was, is the project going to benefit those wetland associated species? And so Mike's question is really the right one. I mean, any map, either it reflects where those species are or it's not accurate. And when I was doing some of the scoring, we definitely encountered projects that claimed that they were going to benefit this whole set of birds because of where they were, but with knowledge on the ground, there's no cerulean warbler habitat, there's no actual emergent marsh, no salt marsh for. So, there was a kind of I'll just say a smarter way to evaluate the value of those technical question 3 than simply relying on the map. So that's not to say we shouldn't strive or you shouldn't strive for a better map, but I think that going back to the original intent, doing something like stacked eBird distributions or some broader polygon like a coastal area that is beneficial for salt marsh sparrow would be more along the lines of the intent than trying to decide whether this island is in and that island is not, because that was certainly never anybody's intent, I don't think. So anyway, it's not, a criticism of what you guys are doing as a temporary fix, but in the longer term, if that's going to continue to be a way of scoring proposals, I think we could come up with a better system that reflects the value for those birds.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, and we certainly, the joint venture science coordinating group anticipated the discussion of we need to make some larger changes, right? We need to rethink about how we use maps. So what we're proposing, or what we will be proposing to the steering committee, is this is a short-term temporary fix so we can do it right now so we don't mess up. And then if the individual plans want to reconsider their map or how to think about maps, the NOCA staff is very flexible and open to considering other ways of doing this. And it just has to come from the plan. They don't have the time or the resources to sort of rethink it all themselves. So to give you a little insight as well, the waterfowl management plan is starting to consider updating our important area map, using probably some of those eBird tools and other things that we hope to sort of present as an option for other plans to use if they would like to as well. But we haven't updated one since 2012. We think there's some good changes. It's not really, like Ken said, a lot of these aren't based on data. They're based on people drawing something on a map. So we want to get away from that. So we're starting that exploration now, but we know that's going to take a little while. Any other questions? Go ahead, Ellie.
Hey, Tony, I was just going to say, I think, and this was before my time, I'm with the Boreal Leaving Modeling Center. This is before my time, but when Tegan Doherty was our coordinating scientist, I think that they may have used some of the BAM models for the PHJV priority areas. And so it might, if there is an interest in going down that route of how to stack species distribution models to identify these areas, it might be worth reaching out to Tegan or myself and maybe just learning a little bit more about what happened there instead of maybe reinventing the wheel from scratch.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks. And we're working on the waterfowl side with some CDOT stuff and stacking species for some survey work as well. So thanks.
Cool.
All right. Well, Len, that's all I have. I didn't hear any don't go down this route, and we'll probably take it to the steering committee and try to get their blessing here at their next meeting as well. So I appreciate the time on the agenda.
Great. Thanks, Tony. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Everything's frozen for me and my teams have been acting up today. So, yes, so thank you for that. And yeah, I think it seems logical to adjust those polygons because it, yeah, seemed odd that some of those places are excluded. And yeah, feel free to come back and consult with us as needed. All right, our next agenda topic, future agenda items. So we're looking for suggestions if there are any of the working groups that are working on any topics that they would like to bring forward to the full science committee. Suggestions for speakers that you think would be relevant for us to invite. We're all ears to that. For the moment, we are
Hey, Len, you froze, so you might have to turn your video off. Len and I are very aligned, but I don't know what she was going to say. Well, I know part of what she was going to say, so I don't believe that
meeting
we're going...
agenda. Oh, did my sound go away and then just came back?
Yes, now you're back.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah. I don't know where
No, it's
you
okay.
lost me.
We just missed like the last 30 seconds. I assume what you were going to say, which you can say it now. Go for it.
Okay. Confirming you can still hear me.
I can.
Okay. Where did I leave off? Yeah, so I mean, essentially, Sarah and I have talked, and we just feel like a in-person meeting is really not an option right now, given all of the travel restrictions. And then we were considering if we wanted to do sort of a more focused virtual event, but we felt like it had been going pretty well, having us address some of these topics more in detail on our monthly calls. And so we'd like to visit that as an option moving forward for now, at least. And with that, then to solicit agenda items from all of you, where you think there are important topics, either from working groups or elsewhere, that we might want to bring in.
I think I'll also say that I think a good way to think about this is if we were having a very focused virtual meeting or in-person meeting, what topics would you guys want to discuss? I know it's not the same as having an in-person meeting, but we have talked ad nauseum about how we would do that or where we would do that. And no matter where we think we would have it, half of us wouldn't be able to come. So it's really heartbreaking. It's very challenging for me. And I'm sure many, because I miss you guys and I miss seeing everybody in person. And there's clearly things that we just do better in person. So, but all of that aside, yeah, what are some topics that pop to mind that you would want more time spent on that we could give monthly meetings to? You guys always come up with ideas when we say, oh, we'll have a half day for ACAD, half day for population estimates, a half day for the full annual cycle topics. And so really be thinking about those type of topics, we could invite, and we'll just keep inviting those folks and keeping our really meaty running list of agenda topics, which I think have been great over the last 3 or 4 months and prior as well. But go ahead, Becky.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it'd be great to use part of the meetings for and I know we're getting into this topic later, so just to park this, but to working on updating the update for the 2016 plan. And so having every couple of months, devoting some time to working through that as a group would be great.
Agree. Thank you. Ken?
Yeah, two ideas for broad topics that I'd like us to focus more on. One, I mean, we're kind of doing it, but I had a conversation last week with Chris Wood, who's, now the director of the whole eBird enterprise sort of thing at Cornell. And he was telling me what he had just presented to the Cornell board on sort of big picture, what's on the horizon, exciting stuff happening within eBird. And it was really cool stuff. And so I asked him if he'd be willing to share that with partners in flight, that we're trying to think about how to use eBird more and more as a data source. And he said he'd be very happy to. So I know that we've had more focused and technical presentations by Oren and Viviana and others, but I think having Chris sort of lead, give us a presentation and lead a discussion on sort of big picture future directions for eBird and how it can relate to partners in flight, I think would be good. And the other one, which is kind of vague in my mind right now, but not surprising to you, is thinking about where Road to Recovery is going right now and the funding that's being directed to a whole set of species working groups, including some new ones that are forming or reforming with the funding that's been gotten. And at the same time, discussions about how tipping point species were derived from ACAD, what's the future of that, where are some of the data deficiencies, how do the species working groups want to use databases more? And so this whole idea of how the future of the ACAD relates to Road to Recovery processes and data needs, and including how Road to Recovery can help secure a future for the ACAD database, but also just more broadly, how Partners in Flight Science is going to relate to and continue to help inform these, processes like the recovery, plans within the working groups. So that broader topic, I think we need to keep the connecting the dots part.
Thanks, Ken. Mike?
That eBird stuff would be great. I keep hearing about these new amazing things that are developing there, and it does sound incredible. My thought is kind of vague here, but in the steering committee, we're talking about the 2027 meeting with CPMX in Guadalajara, and it would be great to think about how we present ourselves from the science standpoint at that meeting and how we can engage completely there. We're talking about merging with them not taking over as another big PIF international meeting, even though it's been 10 years since the last one, but rather using sorry, I'm getting some background noise, using that location and their partnerships to really help them emphasize bird conservation in Mexico, south of the border. And so really with them as a focus and bird conservation in that region as a focus. And to that extent, we're talking about an updated 2016 plan, what that's going to look like. Obviously, Mexico's coming up with their own plan, how those two merge and how all of these things might combine to develop some really strong messaging around that 2027 meeting in Guadalajara. So just some vague thoughts, but just put it on the horizon as potential topics for this group.
Thank you. Go ahead, Randy.
I don't know if anyone else, maybe other than maybe Tony and JV science coordinators, will really be interested in this. But Ken, you're talking about thinking about some of the road to recovery stuff, and I know I'd be interested in having some conversations again around population objectives. How do you define what recovery is? I know joint ventures are working on, trying to move forward with population objectives at their scales. And what role does PIF want to play in sort of saying overall, what are population objectives for some of these key species that we're concerned with?
Mike.
Another potential topic. As the service is winding up its Birds of Conservation Concern Plan, the evaluation of species led to a lot of recommendations I think we'd like to bring to the Science Committee about changes for some of the birds, some of the scoring for some of the birds. And so it might be worth a specific meeting with some of the leads as we get our thoughts together and compile a list of things. That might be an additional topic for an upcoming meeting.
I agree.
And sorry, I was just making some notes, but Randy, to your population objectives topic, there was a couple years ago, our species at risk program at CWS came up with a whole bunch of guidance about sort of defining what it means, what recovery means, what does that look like. And so there might be some interesting information we could pull out from there as well. And I feel like maybe, Marcel, did I hear you at one point talking about that you were wanting to work on population objectives sort of related to that, our main CWS indicator about the number of species that are at their population objectives? Am I making that up?
Yeah, no, well, no, you're not making it up. It's a question of how all these pieces fit together. So, and I've mentioned this in part with some of the discussions that have been going on over email with the ACAT group, that essentially with the State of Canada's birds in 2024, we set our national goals and our status relative to those national goals. And we're now shifting into the next phase, which is to look at the regional priorities, which will serve to help meet those national goals. So it's kind of a regionally focused angle on population objectives and being strategic with efforts for whether it's conservation investments or impact assessment and things like that. There are aspects of that which borrow quite a bit from the ACAT structure, so that we're not reinventing the wheel. We're using what's there. There are elements of it that are going to be more customized to Canadian data, whether it's trends within Canada or jurisdictional responsibility, things like that, that will emphasize scores and rankings a little bit differently than at the continental scale. So that is all kind of ongoing over the next, ideally, 6 to 12 months or so, depending on how things go. And then in parallel with that is the work that the population estimate subgroup or working group is doing to update the estimates that were last done in 2019, 2020, and ideally to expand to a whole range of additional species that weren't covered that time, so that essentially there's more of a comprehensive basis for those population estimates to be pulled back into ACAD and to have that uniformity of approach there. So all of these things are kind of aligning over that next, year to year and a half period. There's a bit of interdependency. There's people like Adam who are involved, and Ellie as well, in multiple aspects of this that we're trying to balance to figure out what the sequence is. And so how, the extent to which some of that is a Canada-focused Canadian Wildlife Service product, and other aspects of it are going to be PIF products in terms of the population estimates and so on. That, I guess, we're kind of figuring it out as we go, but all of these pieces kind of have to be done concurrently, and they'll just, different aspects of them will appear in different places. I know that sounds kind of nebulous, but the short answer is yes, you're right. We're kind of working on that, and the devil's in the details.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts? Any pieces from the ACAD working group that could use a little bit broader consultation?
Oh my God, that group is forever considering different things, but I don't know. Ken can maybe speak to it. I don't know that there's anything right now that they're ready, but for sure in the future, there'll probably be items.
Yeah, the two items I mentioned, I think, are mostly or largely ACAD related, and the eBird part, how to use that more and more, but also the future relationship between ACAD broadly and things like road to recovery, I think, are big topics. So not as narrowly technical. I'm sure ACAD will have those as well. But
It's a good list to start from, for sure. Thank you all. Any other thoughts before we move on? We'll revisit this topic again.
No, I would just say keep it at top of mind. If anything crosses your mind or you see a presentation that would be relevant to us, please just shoot Ellen and I an email and we can help to set it up.
For sure. All right. What's next? ACE publication updates. So a few of the papers are now published, which is excellent. The sort of highlight overview now more than ever paper is published. Is the population estimates posted yet? I forget now.
Yeah,
It was posted. Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. And then the paper that Becky and Adam and others helped to lead on whether or not we're meeting our objectives. That one's been published also. And there are a few others that are just sort of hearing back on the second reviews. So I know the ACAD has just heard back from the second round of reviews, same as the cluster analysis paper. And also the soaring higher paper that Anna Gonzalez led, should be published soon also. I believe it was in the proofs stage, so that should be showing up soon. So super exciting to see those starting to roll out. And if others on the call were involved in any of the other papers and would like to give us a quick update on their status, that would be great. Right. I think we're missing some of the lead authors from the other papers today. So anyway, keep checking that ACE website and take a look at the papers as they appear, and they're looking really great. So thank you, everyone. I may turn this next one over to you, Becky, because I feel like all of the PIF symposia and other activities that are coming up, that you're leading on most of those in one way or another. So you'll be better positioned to speak to them than me.
Okay, I don't have the agenda in front of me, so you just tell me which ones if I miss something. So we have upcoming is the AOS meeting is the first one up. And there's a number of people that are on this call that are involved with that. So for the AOS meeting is also being held in conjunction with the Partners in Flight Eastern Working Group meeting. So that's in Amherst, Massachusetts. Our meeting is the 3rd on the first day, and then it's the 3rd through the 7th for the AOS. We have 12 presenters, the bulk of which are the authors from the different papers that were featured in ACE. And the only little hiccup we have right now is that the Southern Wings folks, those who are going to present, aren't available. So if there's anyone on here who's really engaged in Southern Wings and feels like they'd like to reach out to me and we can talk about it, that would be great. Or because Deb Hahn really isn't sure who's attending the meeting. So we're still looking for someone for that one, but we'll get it sorted out. So I'm not super panicked. We also have a lot of Partners in Flight folks that are involved in the Opta Symposium that Sarah Kendrick's putting together. And there's another one that I'm forgetting. So related to PIF and the PIF Eastern Working Group, also at the AOS meeting, Randy can probably speak to the planning around that, but we're also doing, so we're planning to do a roundtable, which is really kind of lunch with everyone in between the morning and afternoon parts of the PIF symposium, with just as reminding me that I need to reach out to our symposium presenters, including those online right now, and ask you to please come to lunch, because you're kind of the main thing that we're featuring there. And then there's also some other things around the Eastern Working Group other than the Monday meeting and that. And what is it, Randy? I'm forgetting and I feel bad about that.
We're trying to organize some sort of a social gathering, perhaps in conjunction with some of the other AOS groups that like to do things like that. So I don't think we have a specific time for that yet, but stay tuned more on that.
Okay, super. Thanks, Randy. And then there's a couple other things that are happening. So there's the meeting with CPMX, and the dates are escaping my brain right now. And it's also the International Ornithological Congress. So CPMX very graciously gave PIF, they were like, I don't know if given's the right word, but given to sort of symposium slots, and they allowed PIF to have one of those. So all of those abstracts and everything have gone in. I know that I sent emails a while ago about that. Like, so as far as I know, everything is in. I don't have any more information on that at this moment. But we'll be doing like 4 longer presentations that will be like compilations of multiple documents and multiple papers, sorry. And then also last thing for the for the Society of Canadian Ornithologists meeting, which is also coming up in the fall. I submitted, they did things a little differently this year because it was roundtable, or because it was virtual. And so they, I forget what they called it, but they basically asked for these, like, where you could give like a 20-minute talk describing your lab or your work or whatever. So I put in one for Partners in Flight. So we'll see if that goes through. I know they were heavily subscribed, so we'll see. Was there anything else on that list?
No, that was all we were aware of. But
Okay.
maybe someone else is up to something that we don't know, if you want to share. All right.
Who's
So, yeah,
up to
thank you.
something?
But yes, I thank you, Becky, for sort of taking the torch on this. And you know, I know we like to have a PIF presence at these meetings, and it's a lot of work to organize these. So thank you very much.
That's no problem. I mean, and also for the AOS, that's really all of the Eastern Working Group. I just happened to do the symposium one.
Excellent. All right. Marcel, I will turn it over to you to talk about BCR numbering.
Thank you, I think. So I think, as you all remember by now, we have engaged in this surprisingly multi-year process to make some adjustments to BCR boundaries in primarily in northern Canada and spilling over into Alaska in terms of BCR3. And so we've in the past presented the rationale for the boundary adjustments and mapped them, and all of that was good. We got the new maps ready to go, and then we realized, well, there's one final detail: is what are we calling them? And so we have English, French, and Spanish names for them, but of course, BCRs we usually refer to by number. And so until now, we had this nice sequential list from 1 to 67, and we are going to mess with that. So to remind you, we've split 3, which was by far the largest of the BCRs, the Arctic one. We split that 3 ways, and then BCR 6 got split into basically a northern part and a southern part. 7 got a western, a central, which is the Hudson Bay lowlands, and an eastern, and 8 got a western and an eastern. And our original naive thing and what we had presented to PIF Science in the past was simply, well, you know, if it's a west and an east, it's 8W and 8 east, and so on. And later than we should have, we realized 2 things. One is that, well, you know, W works well in English, but it doesn't in Spanish or French. So that's one knock against that approach. And the second is that databases really do not like alphanumeric labels. So we began to quickly scramble to think of what else we could do instead. And the initial quick feedback we had with a couple of database people was, well, if we do decimals, that's not as bad as alphanumeric. So we could do like 8.1 and 8.2. That seemed fairly simple. Some database folks seem to be more perturbed by that than others. So I think structurally there still is a bit of a challenge there that we need to acknowledge. It does have, of course, the benefit that there's a continuity. If you see 8.1 or 8.2, you know it is related to the old 8. There's no doubt about what that is. The counter argument, I guess, is that for someone who doesn't know the history and would look at the list, it's like, well, you know, why are some of these BCRs like whole numbers and others are decimals? Are they not, you know, are they not proper BCRs? Different perspectives on that. So we thought, well, another alternative would be to simply say, you know what, 3, 6, 7, and 8 don't exist anymore. We're just going to append new numbers to the end. There's now 10 BCRs where there were 4, and we're just going to keep on numbering from where we left off after Hawaii. So they're going to be 68 through 77. It's going to look a little bit funny on the map because otherwise you kind of have small numbers at the top and they work down to larger ones, but whatever, if the number, it's there, you can look it up. That's, simple enough. But obviously it's not as intuitive in terms of, well, what did BCR 8 become? Well, it became 76 and 77. You have to somewhere look up that crosswalk. It's not something you can just glean from the numbers. And then the final option, the fourth scenario that we considered was that you could give it a new integer number that does still retain that link. So the 2 parts of 8 could become 801 and 802. And so they're distinct integers. It's clear what they were related to because nothing else is going to be in the hundreds unless it's a subdivision of what we had. And that would solve some of those problems. But of course, at a glance, it might make it look like we have 800 BCRs, which is misleading. Although I think if anyone looks closer, they're going to quickly see that's not the case. You just won't immediately be able to tell how many there are. So basically, those are the 4 options we've thought of. It's possible there are others, but just to summarize, we have alphanumeric, so like 8 west, 8 east. We have decimal, so 8.1, 8.2. We have new numbers, 68 to 77 at the end of the list, or we have new numbers that jump out into the farther reaches into the hundreds, like 801 and 802. And I can see pros and cons to all of these. Everyone seems to have a different perspective, but what we need to do is land on something. And so the trilateral, well, let me step back for a second. It was NABC that oversaw the previous iteration of the BCRs. And in Canada, at least, NABC is inactive. And so that's why this kind of became a PIF-led process to update these BCRs and split them, redefine them. And then it was taken to the Trilateral Committee as basically a sign-off authority on what we were proposing. So they're fine with everything as mapped and so on. And the messaging I've got via Charles Francis is effectively that they're okay with whatever makes sense to users, but they would like to have some kind of signal from user groups as to which of these approaches is better. So one user group, we are part of in terms of Canadian Wildlife Service, we do BCR plans, and so we can have an opinion on that. But obviously another key user base is PIF Science and all of those of you with different hats that you wear outside PIF Science. So I would love to hear if, whether from a database management perspective, continuity perspective, whatever, do any of you have strong feelings in support or against any of these options? Or is there kind of a collective shrugging off the shoulders and we can just go with whatever? I'd rather have a strong opinion because I really don't know how to choose at this point. So, Adam, weigh in.
I guess I will, and I'll just say this for pretty selfish reasons. We've got, I think, all are part of 15 BCRs in the Sonoran joint venture. We have certain tools that are already set up with, BCR 33, 34, and I'd have to go through and do a lot of work on our, I am updating our bird conservation plan, but just keeping it consistent for here. I think that would kind of ripple across the rest of the continent, and then just kind of adding the extra numbers at the end might not look the best on the map, but if somebody spends a couple of minutes looking at it, I feel like I would come to the conclusion, it's like, oh yeah, they probably did something here and just added these at the end.
Yeah, fair enough. And I should note that, the vast majority of the implications at this point are in Canada because that's where the splits were. So, none of the BCRs in lower 48 are going to change, but obviously if someone's looking at a continental perspective, it's still matters. So that's one vote in favor of 68 to 77. Anyone else?
I like 68 to 77 as well.
Okay, Tony says so as well in the comments. Oh, we're starting to get a consensus.
Yeah, I'll vote
Least
for
a-
that, even though it's not a strong opinion. It just
Pete, what do
seems
you
like
say?
it seems like when people forget about us, that'll be the most intuitive way to do it. We're the only ones worried about this transition period.
Well, it could be, but Pete, are you on board, or you're going to throw us a wrench into this?
Oh yeah, oh, Pete, whatever Pete says.
You might be muted, Pete.
He's not muted, but it's not working. I can't hear you, Pete. Still can't hear you, Pete.
Maybe we'll come back to you if you need to fiddle around with your connectors. Becky, go ahead.
Okay, sorry for, I'm not good with which preference was what, but the 68, like adding more is basically get rid of the old numbers and just add them on the end. That's correct. Yeah, that would be.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just think as soon as you get into decimals, I think you get into like it looking like different systems. And it'll look like one is a subset of another, even if it's not. So yeah.
Mm. Okay.
Also, I think very few people will be hung up on the continuity from an 8 needing to be in the number, like 801 and making it 3 digits. I think that's just a bridge too far. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, for those of us who have used them a lot,
Right.
it's just easier to think that, yeah, we want to still know what was,
Sure.
3 or 6 or 7 or 8. But I think, it was Ken who said, we're going to get used to it quickly enough. So
You can say
we probably
formally known as.
Adopt a Prince method, right? The region formerly known as 8.
Yeah, so we're not going to get into symbology here. That would really
No,
throw
but
the
I like that
databases for a
idea.
loop.
I think that's what we do.
I think Ken's voting for Zap Swingdings characters.
Yeah,
I think you
exactly.
should put an 8 with a left arrow for west and then an 8 with an east arrow right next to it for east. That way everybody will know and it'll make databases extra fun.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ellie.
For
Go to it.
three where we have the higher elevation is going to be an up arrow
Yeah.
for the Cordilleran. Yeah. Ellie?
Up arrow and a down arrow. Sorry, Ellie. Go say something intelligent.
Well, I'm going to ask the hard question, Marcel, which is when do you think you will make this decision? Because we're getting really close to finally releasing the BAM version 5 models, and we currently have option 4, but without the 0 in the middle. And I would love to do that mass file rename before we release the models.
How do you do option 4 without the 0 in the middle? I'm just curious.
Well, we had 71, 72 because there's a can prefix, but that doesn't work because there's a 60 and a 61 down. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, we need to relabel anyway, but I
see.
What's your timeline?
Yeah. That's the thing. That would have been the easy thing if it weren't for the fact that we already had things in the 30s and 60s. That would have been great. Yeah. Anyway, to answer your question, I mean, ideally today, really the map,
okay.
The map is ready to go. The trilateral has a call next Wednesday, where they're, by the sounds of it, willing to rubber stamp whatever we recommend. And so, if I can relay to Charles that there's a strong majority here who seem to favor the 68 to 77, then that's helpful. I see Pete in the comments has noted that he prefers 2 and 4 because they're related to the past numbers and doesn't like 3 for that reason. And I mean, that is, those are the different perspectives. And I think we're just, none of these solutions is perfect. I admit I'm more inclined to do something that has some linkage to what it was, just for ease of linkage. But I can also see that 5 years from now, having it a 68 to 77 makes as much sense as anything. So
Okay, so bug you next
flexible as
week is what you're saying. Next Friday.
Yeah,
I'm going to
sure.
send you an email.
Sounds good. Yeah. So anyone else want to weigh in on any of these options?
I'm going to make one more pitch for 3, Marcel, that
Yeah,
the life cycle that we hope for these BCRs versus the life cycle of people using them right now. We hope that they outlast us by a long time, which means there's no need for a link back to what they were. Everybody using them now is going to know what they are in 2 months when they look at them all the time. So let's just tack them on to the end and cut some out instead of trying to do this wonky relationship that nobody's going to really know why that relationship needs to exist in 10 years, hopefully.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree that in the future, the other ones might not age as cleanly. So
Yeah, and I
Okay,
think the
well-
other thing is we might have new BCRs for regions beyond what we totally have right now. So it is a more flexible system for the future.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Wendy, that in a sense, we're setting a precedent now. So I doubt that this will be the last time that we ever want to tweak any boundaries. We already had discussions about whether BCR4 is, too large or should be subdivided. But I think, yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah, good point,
Okay,
Mike. Just rip off the Band-Aid, get it done.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for the input. Ellen, did you have something?
Oh, no,
sorry.
Marcel, I was just going to say, in the interest of actually having sort of a final, I mean, it seems like the option just to go with the numbers in the 70s kind of received the most support here. Do you need anything else so that you can move forward with that?
No, I think I can report back to Charles on that. He'll take it to the trilateral and just see if there's any lingering concerns there. But I'll just summarize a couple of the comments in support and against that were made here, and I'll just report back on what they finalize. So thanks for your input. That was helpful.
Great, and thanks for sticking with this, Marcel. I know it has taken a lot longer than anticipated.
Yes, it was a quite the ride, but I will be happy to retire this one.
Yes, indeed. Just in time to revisit BCR4 and other things. Okay, so now we can move on to our next topic, which is the next PIF product. So you'll recall that we did have a number of conversations about this in the past. At the end of our last conversation, we asked for hands raised for people who would like to meet in a smaller working group to keep fleshing this out a little bit more and help into the future. So that ended up being Becky, Tony, Sarah, and myself. So we've met a few times in the interim and wanted to provide an update on our thinking. And feel free, if you missed the call, to raise your hand and participate. It is not too late. We always accept additional brain power on this. So don't feel overlooked. But this is where we are for now, from the sort of the interim conversations that the 4 of us have had. I think, Sarah, I'm going to send it over to you. I don't know if you wanted to share your screen with the sort of high level points that we discussed earlier.
Yes, I will share my screen in just a moment, but I'm going to talk at you for a few minutes so that you understand the background and so that you're not reading it while we're the background. Okay, the word of the day is update. Okay, so we need an update on the technical pieces of the 2016 Landward Plan. And so we're clearly overdue, or we're nearly overdue, for a science update, again, on the technical pieces. The 2016 plan went to 2026. It is currently halfway through 2026, if you weren't sure. And so in this avian conservation plan update, we really, through talking about it a lot, we would really like to present the relevant updates from the PIF Science special features, the points from the Now More Than Ever intro piece, just points from that updates to the ACAD from that manuscript, population estimates database. There's a question there for that working group, how much we want to update and provide, whether we met our 26 trend objectives, which is another one of the manuscripts, of course, and we want to give nods to migration connections development and the CISs as we work moving forward. Again, we need an update to this plan now because we have partners asking us for it, and we need to meet that gap because it's about to kind of expire in theory. And the goal of this update, which we hope to keep it rather slim and focused on the science tools and the updates and examples of implementation, we really feel that's meeting an immediate need by the end of 26, hopefully, very optimistically by the end of 26. So at our May meeting, of course, we heard from Claudia and Adrian about the Mexican National Bird Plan. They are in the very beginning stages of NOCA, which is the acronym for the Mexican National Bird Plan. They're in the beginning stages. We feel, talking amongst the four of us, this small team for this update, that a broader PIF plan with NOCA folded in, more of like us Saving Our Shared Birds Volume 2 is just what I'm calling it right now, like a broader, more internationally coordinated plan. But NOCA is not ready yet. There is talk again of the meeting in Mexico in 2027. John has mentioned wanting to work on a plan with international partners starting then in 27. And so if planning began then, it would take years. We really don't want to wait that long on an update to the science pieces of the 2016 plan. We'll highlight full annual cycle through migration connections and the CISs, but keep a more in-depth plan as a broader product in the future when Mexican partners are wrapping up NOCA or have made more progress, and possibly a Mexico meeting. Okay, so we're viewing those as separate, as like the next big PIF plan internationally driven, not that the update won't be international, but we want the technical pieces to be an update, a 2026 update. If we try to tie in something larger like this broader, more internationally driven PIF plan, it'll really take years, to be honest. So this update is kind of an interim step with the technical information that partners need to continue their planning. And we don't want to go past the 26, 27. We don't want to go past what the 2016 plan laid out. We kind of barely have the capacity of this small group to move this forward fairly quickly. I am, again, very optimistic that we could, maybe naively optimistic, should think we could put something like this together by the end of 26 calendar year. But again, we feel that we barely have this capacity amongst ourselves to move this forward really quickly. So a big, broader plan, like a huge 100 pages or more plan is not feasible right now. It feels within the realm of doable, given incredible constraints right now on all sides of our borders. But for practitioners and planners, they're asking for these data. We want to scope it smaller to get this part done right now. So now I'm going to share my screen and find it here. So this is our working outline, and this is redundant with what I just said, but I'm still going to walk through it. So I want to be really clear again on what we want this document to be, what we think this document is, and what this document is not. Again, as Alen said, I welcome more people to be involved in this process. We want to keep the group, sort of smallish because it's just really hard to plan ongoing meetings with like 10 people. But people are welcome to provide input. That's why we're presenting this. So what we feel the document is, again, a targeted update to the 2016 plan, not a full PIF plan revision. The scope is to incorporate, like I said, updated ACAD scores, evaluate population trends against the 2016 objectives, highlight the addition of the Latin American scores in the ACAD, provide a science foundation drawn from our special feature manuscripts. Not all of them will be appropriate to give full list outs, but we want to touch on the relevant ones. Again, this is an interim step to a larger PIF plan that we recognize will take years, but we want a larger PIF plan to be more closely put together with international partners and Mexican partners in particular. And it will feature science tools and updates to step down to implementation. What it is not, again, is a 200-page comprehensive PIF plan. It will not include detailed species counts, and it will not be a replacement for the 2016 plan. It is an update. I also took the word land bird out of the title because we have moved beyond that for the scores. So our primary audiences, we feel, are conservation practitioners and planners.
Can you zoom in a little bit? It's awfully
yep.
small. Thank you. All right.
No, don't apologize. I don't know how to go over here, which is stupid. There, how's that? Can you still see it, or did it get smaller?
No, it's better. There's the little 100% at the top of the toolbar. That's the zoom.
Oh, you're so smart.
We can also plus minus on our own screens if you go down to the left-hand corner, everybody.
Okay, that too.
I didn't know that. Thanks, Becky.
Okay, primary audiences. All right. Conservation planners and implementers, JVs, NOCA, WHC grant applicants, federal, provincial, territorial, and state agencies in the US, Canada, and Mexico, broader Latin American conservation partners and agencies, because of clearly the updated expanded ACAT scores, and then the PIF working groups, NABC, R2R, other bird conservation partners. The anchor science, again, that we want to hone in on as the meat of this update is the ACAD methodology and scores paper, the POP estimates database update. We need to discuss that with Marcel and Adam and the rest of the working group to discuss how much we want to include in the scope of that update, or yeah, population trend analysis paper versus the 2016 objectives, climate vulnerability paper, the cluster analysis paper, and the migration connections. The port tool, we want to get into the updated science, but also tools for implementation. So we want to feature the port tool and the conservation investment strategy. And then the special feature intro essay, which will be part of the intro of the update. Also, we want to include implementation examples of how PIF Science has been implemented through JVs, state agencies, and others. We haven't fleshed that out yet, but that's another piece of this as well. Our next steps are to reach out to the subcommittees within PIF Science, like population estimates. Most importantly, I think that's where the bulk of our questions lie, of how far we want to go with that. The authors of the papers, and the four of us will be meeting again, probably monthly, to figure out next steps and to start working on drafts. Again, this is open for folks who want to join us. I hesitate to make it like 10 people because, again, it's really hard to schedule planning meetings. It just seems like everybody is worked to the max. But if people want to help write or edit or put this thing together, you're welcome, and please let us know. So how, I won't go into the population estimates group because we'll meet with Marcel and Adam and the rest of the group to kind of flesh that out. How do you feel about this big picture content, the scope, the scale, and yeah. Thoughts, welcome. Oh, come on. Go ahead, Wendy.
Okay, I'll go first. First of all, you have director written all over you, Sarah,
Oh
in
God.
the future to suggest an end year end date for this. I'm just like, whoa. So at first I was like, okay, we could do this if it's like, if you look at the 2016 and you want to update the scores, for it's just a Canada US thing. I thought, and especially considering the way NOCA is doing its new scoring, like how we can present the data in a way that would help support our joint ventures, I think would be really good. But then you started adding all this other stuff that you wanted to include, and then that's where I was just like, oh, this is getting would be very hard for an end of 26 deadline.
Like what?
Well, when you started in your yellow box there, the anchor science and incorporating all the stuff. If it's just like a sentence with a reference to the paper, fine. But if it's like, you know, a little bit of I mean, we don't want to just reiterate what's in the papers. That seems useless. We want to be the updates were always supposed to be a tool that like our joint ventures or our land managers could actually readily use. So if it's integrating all this stuff, like putting in the scores, maybe adding some elements of the other stuff, great. If it's reiterating, I don't see the point. That's not very exciting for me. But if it's like a way that we can reiterate, you know, republish like what is the Canada US responsibility scores, you know, how that nests into all our different planning, then I feel like that is a useful tool. As someone that's in the regions that work with the joint ventures intimately, you know, those are the kind of things that are valuable to us. I mean, it's even hard for us to use like a Canada population estimate. It is super helpful when it's Canada US for us, especially for us in the West. Yeah, and then the other thing I would just add, like, if we're going all bird, which I don't mind, and I think, again, that's not a bad way to rip off the Band-Aid, but we need to think about our broader engagement. We're more well represented here on the all bird front than we were in 2016, but there's still a lot of missing pieces.
No, I agree. I just didn't want to say land bird in the title. I mean,
no,
but
I understand.
I
love it. Like, I love that all bird, but I'm just saying. So I guess I would say if you really want like a 2026, then I think we need to really think about something more realistic that we can deliver within that time frame. The meetings have to be more than monthly if you're thinking 2026. Like monthly ain't gonna cut it. So
I guess I'm thinking that it won't be like, I don't want to downplay any of the lift, like population estimates work has to put into that if we're presenting new numbers and things like that. So that is why we will be meeting with those groups to see like feasibility and time frame and things like that. So none of the end of 2026 is clearly set in stone. It's just, I think by putting some of the manuscript information into one document that's a guidance document, it kind of will pull it all together for planners and implementers in one place, and we'll be able to kind of interpret those findings for people in a format that is not as easy in a scientific paper. So I do think that some translation of that science into application is a big part of it that I may not have articulated very well. I just don't know how many practitioners are reading all the scientific pubs, and some do for sure. But I think that if our role in PIF Science is in a way to provide guidance of like, you know, objectives and to set guidance, I think this will be a nice step down from the technical science to how people can implement. I did think of it having new information with population objective trends or population, but we again, we need to talk to the working group about that. So I guess the only thing that made it feasible for the next 6 months, aside from that, of course, and if that's a non-starter, then it's a non-starter of the population estimates information, but we can pull together those data and that information and that translation into one more guidance document, like an update document, I think. But yeah, I think that,
Sarah, can I just jump into in terms
please.
of the referencing to the papers? Like, it was more, this is more just an opportunity or a venue for us to highlight that work and that exists in the published literature for folks that might not see it otherwise.
Yeah, and I didn't anticipate like a page or two per all of these topics, but rather like a third of a page or half page, like saying this exists and, you know, being able to provide a little bit more context in a more conversational application way rather than from the scientific pub. Go ahead, Ken. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, okay, all right. Being old and impatient, I support Sarah being director and this very fast timeline of getting it done in 2026. And I think the trick for doing that is to just delegate and tell people what to do, and everybody takes responsibility for a section, or little groups do, and we kind of work backwards. What can we get done in that time frame? And we get it done instead of this sort of open-ended, timeless thing that we've done in the past. And I think one of the tricks also is very not text heavy. And again, since these papers already exist, lots of referencing and linking to things and summarizing in tables and bulleted lists. And I think we can, extract all that really critical information, update it. And so I'm with you on the optimistic part of it, but you have to whip people into shape, including me, put people to work. And yeah, we have to meet more frequently. I would like to see, there's a couple of ways to do it, the anchor science, yes, but putting in the newer context. So again, thinking about road to recovery kinds of things. Um, we have tipping point species. These are new categories. So by way of explaining those and defining those could be an entree into some examples of what some of the species working groups are doing or what that new approach is trying to do. Same thing with the port tool. We could show the port tool by taking a set of tipping point species and seeing how they're actually distributed. So just some ideas like that that I can help with as I can. But oh yeah, and then there's the Band-Aid ripoff for all birds. I mean, most of what we have is all birds, so if it's mostly technical information that's being provided and not sort of trying to step on everybody's toes, the watch list, the tipping point species list, the whole ACAD, is all birds. So I definitely support us presenting as much information as we can there.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Becky.
Okay, hey all. So I've been part of this team. I have a few things that I just want to add to what Sarah said, and I'm also going to admit, as I sit here and as I was listening to like Marcel, where they were at when he was talking before about population estimates, I think that the 6-month timeline is a little ambitious. But I don't want to, I don't want to cross Sarah under any circumstance, but I do think it might be a little ambitious. Okay. Having said that, though, I just want to mention a bit, like, so with the anchor science piece, some of that is actually just including things in, like, including stuff in what we present. So, like, for example, the population trend analysis paper, whether we like missed whatever objectives, like it's not that we would present the paper. Instead, that might be like included as like we show whether or not we met our 2016 objectives. So a lot of the stuff that sort of was in the special feature is also information that will already be there, like the ACAD updated with the climate vulnerability scores, right? So I think it's more of an integration into the overall piece. We also, so 2 more things I wanted to mention. I know a lot of people, implementation was a big thing, and that's where we came up with thinking about, like, how can we show how things have been implemented? And our thought was to use, was to pull on something like the Prairie Habitat Joint Venture and the stepping, how they've taken, the efforts they've made to determine how much habitat you would need to support particular regional land bird populations. And if I'm describing it wrong, just like forgive me for my poor brain today. But the idea was that we would provide a couple of examples of how joint ventures could really take the information that's provided in the plan and then use it. And then the last thing I did want to mention is that there is the international component in that if we present the ACAD, we want to present all of the ACAD. We don't want to just do Canada and the US. We have to talk, we talked about this with our counterparts in Mexico and figure out, like, there's a lot of next steps here, but we have to talk with our counterparts and figure out how this will work with the NOCA plan in terms of presenting the information that they want presented here in terms of, you know, potential goals and objectives if they're available at that time. So actually, no, I had one more thing I wanted to mention as well. The other thing is like what form this takes. We haven't really decided, right? This could be an online queryable database. I hate to use that word database, but like it doesn't necessarily have to be what we've always done. So a lot of decisions still to be made. This is sort of just the high level. Here's where we want to get the information out for here and for the JVs. And so people can do their planning and then highlight that we really want to move towards the, you know, the full international partnerships as Wendy had suggested and others have suggested in the chat. Okay, I'm done now. Hope I added and didn't confuse.
You added. Good job. Go ahead, Ellie.
Thanks. So I think this follows what Becky said nicely, and I'm relatively new to the group, so this may be a naive comment that is not useful, but I thought I'd maybe say it anyway, just in case. But I think the thing that strikes me immediately is missing from what you're suggesting. Like, it all sounds good, and 6 months or not, as I don't know, I lean more towards set lofty goals and then you eventually get things done side of things. But it strikes me that if this is intended as a stopgap plan, that there needs to be a nod to how it fits within the existing plan and what's coming next, and like how long is this plan in effect for, and
yeah,
you know, what needs to be done for the larger 200-page piece. So I don't know if you had that intended in there, but I think doing that and then setting it in the context of some of these other initiatives, like Becky and Ken said, I think is, to be honest, I think is probably where most of the work is, because there's thought that needs to be put in there and discussion. Anyway.
Yes. No, I agree. And yeah, we did mention that, but we talked about that at our last meeting about needing to be very clear about, again, what this plan is and what it's not, and hoping to set the stage for this. I'm just reading pages in the comments and then I'm just saying pages. Hoping to set the stage for this larger effort that's more integrated with our Mexican partners as they move forward in these broader planning efforts. Thank you. Randy.
Yeah, probably a few sort of similar thoughts in that if we're talking about, yeah, presenting the entire scope, you know, down through Central America and all birds, it's more than an update to the 2016 plan. And so we need to be clear about what that actually means, as Ellie was just kind of saying. And I guess my other thought is, you know, it's kind of the partners in flight responsibility to provide this broad scale plan for land bird conservation. And I don't want us to lose track of that and think carefully about what we feel that responsibility means to partners in flight. And so things like continuing to present what are the priority species, what are the actions, what are the things that really need to be done. And if we're providing a few examples of how implementation has been going, that's great. but also think about the comprehensive nature of what that truly means to have a big plan for land bird conservation at some huge scale. And that's not easy. But I think we have to consider how we message that as part of this update. And I'm probably willing to contribute in some way, shape, or form, yet to be determined, like Ken.
Okay, thanks, Randy.
We could meet in Columbia and figure it all out.
I'm sure there'd be lots of plan writing involved in that. All right. All right, other thoughts on this working summary? You guys have provided good insight and will definitely be taken to heart. Belen had to jump to a request. I don't believe, I think that was our last thing. So last call for comments currently, and of course, we're always all ears if you want to shoot us an email. Marcel, what are your initial thoughts on this? I mean, I know that we haven't like pinged you with the population estimates questions yet of like what the, so like, does it go to 36 or would we, I mean, and we can talk about that later, but what are your first blush reactions to this based on if we present updates to population estimates, probably predominantly?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll maybe ask Adam to jump in too, because a lot of it
please,
kind of sits on his shoulders in terms of timelines
sorry, Adam.
and competing demands and things. But I think I see it two ways, and I'm leaning toward it's good to have a deadline to aim for, because we do have a lot of competing demands. But I think within our working group, we've several times agreed that we're overdue for updating the species that already are in there. We've published now basically a method for doing that. Right. Yes, we're trying to work through some ways of identifying what the best possible sources of data and modeling are for a given species. But like a lot of that is not something that we're necessarily waiting on learning something else. We're just having to find the time to make those decisions and plug everything into the system that we've got. And so perhaps having a date on a calendar says, like, you know, this is when we want to have something by, will force us to try to get more of that done. Now, I will say that there's kind of two stages to it, in the sense that there's the easier group of species. Well, I guess there's three. There's the ones that are already in the population estimates database. And for the most part, we're just updating the inputs and maybe, you know, tweaking a couple of things. There's a second group, which are the ones that were effectively modeled in a comparable way for the 3 billion birds paper, and where we could kind of plug them in the same way and generate output. And then there's a third group, which is including things like seabirds that just don't model in any of the same ways, but which, if we're looking at having a more comprehensive database, we would reach out to the relevant groups of experts, and effectively we would be updating the estimates that are in ACAD, but putting them within the context of the population estimates database. And so how I see it, and I'll turn it over to you and Adam in a sec, but I think that the 1 and 2 parts are largely under our control to model and calculate, pending some input in terms of agreement on which choices to make in the modeling. The third part is harder to guess at, because of we're reaching kind of beyond our core group and tapping into other people whose availability we have less influence in, shorebirds and seabirds especially. But I think we can begin. We've already started working on that with waterbirds. We established contact at our previous meeting, and we can work on that. So Adam, what are your thoughts?
I think you've summarized that nicely. I think having a deadline that is some months away is perfect for in terms of the update of the applying our new model to the species for which we already have estimates and the small additional collection of species for which we think that approach is relevant. The shorebirds and waterbirds are a bit of a slightly more nebulous process, but a significant partial update. Yeah, let's do it.
I like that optimism. Yeah. Okay, so are you thinking more along the lines of like what Wendy said in the chat to do like a Canada US update? Or you're thinking of the broadened Latin American land birds or whatever that are in the ACAD, but that goes beyond land birds, right? So in your
Right,
scenario
good point.
1 and
And so-
2, yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So our current approach works for this the new model.
Yeah.
A new model really only works for the species with significant distributions in
Right.
Canada and the US.
Okay.
We have, conceptually we can apply a lot of that process to some of those other species, but we don't have the underlying data to support that yet.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
So that's an option 2, is to make it a Canada US update. And then, like Wendy said, set the stage for the broader, bigger plan with Mexican partners. It's a thought. Ken? You're muted.
Right. So I'm happy where Adam and Marcel are taking us, of course, because I've been pushing that within unrealistic deadlines within our own group as well. But yeah, but just to sort of keep in our minds separate what the ACAD is from what this update is, the ACAD is not on that quick a timeline, and the next update of the ACAD can deal with
sure.
all those population estimates, and there's no reason why this document we're talking about could be an update of the land bird population estimates, or whatever that subset is that we're able to get done can still be presented, and it's an interim part of the total update of the ACAD itself. So I don't think we have to be worried about like trying to get every bird done by December, but let's move on the ones we can start working on.
Okay. So Marcel, you want to be on the team? Or we could just meet with you, like I said, and we'll just keep it to that for now.
That's fine. I'm happy to. And, yeah, I think it'll be useful.
Yeah, you were
President
already on
Kendrick
the team
strikes
with
again.
You were already on it.
you and Adam were both already
Yeah,
on
Adam,
it.
you
We
wanna
just
be on the
hadn't
team?
talked to you about it, to be honest.
Please God, you want to be on the team? Okay, go back.
The thing is, though, can I just say we don't need like everybody, like I know that we have 4 people that are like, and Sarah said we're planning and we're keeping that small, that like, so we can, we can engage with like, say, I hate that I use the word engage all the time now. We can talk to Adam and Marcel and like work on stuff. And it doesn't mean you have to be involved in all other aspects as well. I know you guys are busy. I think one thing, and I'm just going to raise that may be because we, is thinking about how we present, like, we do the paper on how we're doing relative to the PIF trend objectives, but like there's some things to think about there in terms of how we present how we're doing, whether or not we had these 10-year objectives. We found that the longer term objectives, our methodology wasn't amazing for looking at longer term. Do we want to put in, do we want to have another 10-year interim objective before our 2046 objectives? So there are a few things that we need to consider rather than it just, a lot of stuff being things that we've already accomplished. And I'm throwing that out there because there's a lot of people on this call that need to be part of that think tank as well.
Okay.
Excellent, Wendy.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Well, this is good. We've gotten good feedback. We've gotten more team members. I think our next step is to meet with a small group and meeting with Marcel and Adam to determine scope, I think, and we'll continue meeting in the background. I guess we'll provide an update next month. Please. You're tall. You're really tall. So am I. I never play basketball. I'm not as tall as you. All right. Is there anything else that needs to be said before we adjourn? Sorry, I took it away from you, Ellen. Go ahead. It's a problem.
No, that's okay. And it was a good problem given I got that request in the middle of this call,
Okay.
which is always fun. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
Yeah.
For all your input.
Yeah, I appreciate your thoughts. Great meeting, very productive. We will make the end of this calendar year, or at least make a lot of progress by then.
I'll make progress. I don't want to be beaten though.
Becky, I won't beat you, okay?
Okay,
Jeez.
thank you.
Let's just have naive optimism right now, okay? I need it right now.
Okay, we can do it. We can do
Yeah!
it. Sure.
Okay. Okay, thanks, team.
Okay.
Reach out to us with agenda items. Be thinking about this in your other meetings. When you hear presentations and you think it's relevant to us, please, please, please think of things and send it to us. It's very nice to have a built out agenda for like 6 months at a time. It's a luxury. So please help us in thinking of topics. But okay, thank you.
Sounds like
Great
we're just
meeting.
doing the plan from now on. I don't think we need agenda.
Yeah,
items,
we'll do 50% plan. We have time for one topic for 1 hour per meeting. Okay.
Okay, fair.
Then plan. All right. Bye all. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.